that the source of joy is within yourself. Unless and until you seek yourself, you cannot seek God. They have all talked about the second birth. What we call the baptism is also the same, where you have to be born again. It is not just a formal one that is done by unauthorized people. Even the word Musalman, Muhammad Sahib has again and again talked of a rebirth. You have to find yourself. How do we find ourselves is the problem. Is there something like self? Is there really something like God? Or it's all a myth? Is there any fact in following a religious, holy life that you get your salvation? So far, we have had no proof of it. Naturally, in this scientific world, today, you have to give the proof of everything to convince people so that they seek them. But the science tells us that we were evolved from a little amoeba to a human being. Why? Why? God took so much trouble. If you don't believe in God, we can say nature. Why nature worked so hard to create a human being out of a small little amoeba? Supposing we assemble some screws and we try to work out something. A passerby would ask, why? What are you going to make out of this instrument? What are you doing? There must be some reason why we have become human beings after so much of evolution. But science doesn't think of why. It just tells you this is. And whatever is not there, it says we can't explain. The instrument, whatever it is, supposing has to work on electrical energy or on any energy whatsoever, will come into force or will start working out when it is connected to the mains. Otherwise, it is still in the making process, or you can say it is in transition. Human being as such is in transition. It has not found its own meaning. He does not know why he exists. What is the purpose of his life? It's a meaningless life. So, you have to be connected to the mains. That's what everybody has been saying, that you are to be reborn. You have to become that. Now those who talked of this were born on the 10th story. The rest of them are on this earth. When they talked, it all went over their heads. You have to at least reach the first or second story to understand that there is something beyond this human consciousness This human awareness, there's something more to this awareness. There's a more opening. There's a greater dimension which one has to achieve to understand your own meaning. About Kundalini, all the scriptures, I must say, have described. All the scriptures, without exception. Of course, in India, there has been a very deep meditation tendencies thousands of years back. And some of the seers, long time back, found out about Kundalini. And even in Bhairanga Samhita, Kundalini is described. That's as old as I should say about Vedas. You cannot say the origin of these books. Kundalini has been described in that. Kundalini has been again and again described and also abused and misused and misrepresented. All sorts of things have been done about Kundalini. In the Bible, Kundalini has been described in such a manner that it is not called as Kundalini, but they call it as tree of fire, tongues of flame. Many such adjectives, descriptions are used, but they have not used the word Kundalini itself because it is not written in Sanskrit language. So there must be some mechanism within us by which we are reborn, no doubt. There has to be some mechanism. If I am speaking through this mic to you, there must be some mechanism which is doing the job. In every seed, there is a pinnule, the mechanism, which germinates and creates a big tree out of it. In the same way, we have a mechanism placed within us. But this is a very subtle thing, while human beings are absolutely gross. In this Kali Yuga, modern times, they are even worse. Extremely gross. And they cannot think of something subtle. If I tell you there is an energy which thinks, organizes, loves, we cannot think of such an energy. But how do we organize? How do we think? How do we love? From where do we get that energy? Why shouldn't we think about it? But as I said, that modern man doesn't think of how. He takes it for granted. So, today I want to tell you about this mechanism that exists within you. It should not be just a mental feat with you. No. It should not be the so-called knowledge of Kundalini from outside. But it's a happening where the Kundalini rises. And you get that, whatever is promised, in all the scriptures. Today the time has come to prove the existence of the divine power of God all around us. We have been going and praying to God. Does He listen to us? Are we connected to Him? We do namaz. We spread our hands towards God Almighty. Are we connected with Him? Or we are just doing a mechanical thing? Even so many people are doing Hatha Yoga. They think they are doing it in the name of God. Is it the correct method? Can we do anything about it? If it is a living process, if it is an evolutionary process, we must think we have done nothing for our own evolution so far. From amoeba to this stage we have come without doing anything about it. We have taken our human life for granted. So what can we do about it? If it is a living process, it has to be spontaneous. It has to work by itself, like a seed which is planted. Germinates by itself. At the most, a gardener can pour little water. I can pour water of my love on your seed. At the most. But the seed has to germinate by itself, spontaneous. It is a living process and not a mechanical process. Perhaps we never realize what is a living process because we take it for granted. You see so many flowers turning into fruits, but we never think how it happens. We have no idea of spontaneity. We think by doing something, we are being spontaneous. So one has to be effortless. Because Kundalini is born Sahaja, born with. Saha means with, born with you, Ja means born. So awakening is a happening which happens to you when somebody who is awakened, like an enlightened light or a candle, comes near other lights which are not yet enlightened and enlightens it. Spontaneous. Now you cannot argue it out. You cannot. You cannot rationalize it because rationality is a limited thing. You have to go to something that is unlimited. How can you do it with a limited mind? This is beyond mind you have to rise. If you argue it out, you are going to be away from it. But in science, we have found out many things which indicate, which actually prepares the stage for Sahaja Yoga, which prepares us to know that there is something beyond. We have accepted in the medical science that we have autonomous nervous system which works by itself. We call it auto, swayam, chani. Who is this auto? Who is this one? The one who beats your heart, the one who digests your food. When we say that it is done by a system, you just give it a name. But how do you explain? You cannot do it. You may be able to increase the rate of your heartbeat, but you cannot decrease it. It happens spontaneously, automatically. How does it happen? By giving it a name, you do not explain. In psychology, people have found out that there is something like a universal unconscious. There is something. Sarvavyapi Achetan, which gives symbolic suggestions in the dreams, which are universally the same. They have accepted this. They have proved it by experiments that there is an universal unconscious. So many of them. I shouldn't say all of them because, you see, after all, there will be always a controversy till you reach the truth. Human mind must have something to eat. But they have. They talk of it. Science cannot explain many things. There is another thing which science cannot explain is why certain things act differently in a human body. For example, there are two chemicals known as adrenaline and acetylcholine. They have certain chemical reactions, but in the body, they react differently. They cannot explain. They just say the mode of action of the chemicals in the human body cannot be explained. Finished. In the human body, or in any body as such whichever is living, any foreign matter is thrown out. But when a mother conceives a child in the womb, it is not thrown out, but it is nurtured and looked after. Who does that? Who understands that this is not a foreign matter, but is the future child? Is there somebody thinking inside in your uterus or something that is controlling? Who takes the decision? There must be someone of at least minimum of a human level who thinks for you. So already there are questions for scientists to ask, and they all can be answered. Because the knowledge of science is analytical, is in different corners, and gives you part knowledge. Now Kundalini can be seen. You can see the pulsation of the Kundalini, you can see at least. Many doctors have seen it now. In Delhi, of course, we don't have any doctors so far. I don't know if among you there are any doctors. But you can see with your own eyes the pulsation of the Kundalini very clearly. If you have a stethoscope, you can even feel it. The rising of the Anahata means it's throbbing. It can be done. But how long are we going to sit asking for proof of a Kundalini? Let us now see. As I told you this morning, you must accept this as a hypothesis. Modern times are the worst times. For one reason, that you have to explain everything, which is a very simple thing. As far as religion is concerned. As far as other things are concerned, you don't have to explain. People just accept. For example, if you have to put on this light, I have to just tell you that you go and switch on. That's all. Nobody argues. But today in the morning I told somebody to put his hands towards me like this. He started arguing on this point only. Why should I do it? Now I said I have to tell you the whole thing. Why it is to be done. It's a simple gesture, you cannot do. And he has come here for the Kundalini rising, with all the rights on me. You can't even put your hands towards me. Arguments have got you nowhere. You must understand. This talking blabber has left you nowhere. What have you achieved in that? You think you have done this, you have built this building, you have done that. It's all dead. All dead things. Dead converted into another dead. What living work have you done so far? What have you done so far that you can call as living? You cannot do even a seed sprout. The one who does millions and millions of such things, billions and billions of these seeds sprouting. When we have to know him, at least let us have the humility to know that through your rationality and so-called intellect you are not going to know it. A little drop wants to know the whole of the ocean. How can you explain to an ant the human civilization and the human problems, and how can you explain to a human being the working of the subtle divine forces? God has been challenged by man. See the greatness. That's why in all the scriptures it is written, humble down yourself in your hearts. That doesn't mean that you give up your intellect. Doesn't mean at all. But you must have the balance of your heart also. So, with all these apologetic words, an introduction, I am now telling you about the Kundalini, where it exists. Because now don't start from the very beginning doubting. Please keep your mind open. Later on, when you get your realization through Sahaja Yoga, when you practice it, now we have many here who have got it. And they have seen the working of the Kundalini and have confirmed what I have been saying about it. But to you it will be quite shocking. I know it will be. Because you cannot believe that such a thing can be inside us. Of course, the mechanism has been simplified, because this is just I should say, a primary class, the first standard. So it has not been that complicated as it is. I'll try to make it simpler and simpler. But you must know that it is a subtle thing which you have not seen yourself, you have not felt it, you have not known it so far. It's something out of the blue for you. And in this so-called scientifically enlightened world, it may sound quite foolish to you that I am saying these things. But it is like this. Do not be fanatic about things. Even there are scientists who are real fanatics. Science is another occupation which has really killed their foresight. Can you see from here? Now, this is the picture. As they say, man is made in the image of God. We can say, now let us see the vastu, in the object of which you are the reflection. So, we start from the top. When the child is in the womb of the mother, the energy which you do not know, the energy that is all pervading, called as Chaitanya, is the divine power of love of God, which is all around us. This sounds quite poetic only to people. Many people it's just a poetry, but it is not, it's a fact. Because we have never tried this power before. We only know the power of hatred. So this power of divine love of God, which is all pervading, which is all around us, descends within us. Yes, it does. In the human beings also, when the child is in the womb of the mother. The brain of the man is evolved in such a manner that it gets the shape of a prism, which has got three sides and a base. When this energy enters into the brain, then it passes into all the surfaces of the brain, and some passes through the center on top here. You can say not the center, but the apex, as shown here. At the back it passes through the brain straight into the medulla oblongata, that is in the spinal cord, and forms your central nervous system. As you call it as CNS. On the other side of the brain, left side of the brain, it comes down this way, but when it has to pass to the medulla oblongata, to the brain, it goes into the fraction because of different density, and then passes into the medulla oblongata, losing some of its resultant on the side, into the spinal cord through the medulla oblongata. Another one which falls on the right hand side goes to the left hand side through the refraction. Again it loses some of its outside, as the resultant is divided into two, one going down and one this way, and goes down in the medulla oblongata. The one which falls on the apex of the brain passes through the center and part of it, quite a part of it, escapes into the triangular bone as Kundalini. This is the arrangement made when you are born by God. I call it God because it is so. Of course, if there is God or not, that we'll see later on. That proof I'll have to give you, but not just now. This happens in a very subtle manner because, as I told you, it is a subtle energy, but is expressed in the gross way. In our being, as three autonomous nervous systems. The central one is known as the parasympathetic nervous system. It is expressed as the parasympathetic nervous system. There are two sympathetic nervous systems, left and right. But in the subtle form, which Kabir has described very clearly. In the subtle form, the channels that are carrying those different energies are, in the center, the channel is called as Sushumna Nadi. On the right hand side one channel, it is called as the Pingla Nadi, and the left hand side one is called as the Ida Nadi. These are the subtle things which are existing inside the medulla oblongata, not outside. So, you see, when a doctor opens the medulla oblongata, the person dies. How can you see? How can you see a subtle form of energy through your eyes? You cannot see even your electricity through your eyes unless and until there is a lamp which is enlightened. So you cannot see those energies which are at work inside in a subtle form, but you can see the expression of it in the gross form outside. Now these three energies are like the breath which flows through a flute. The breath that flows through a flute passes through 7 holes. In the same way, there are 7 chakras. Basically, main. When we say 7 holes, actually there are more. Basically, I am saying. I'll tell you about the other ones later on. Just now I am telling you the absolutely, as I told you, in the primary first standard class, I am telling you the basic things. So the chakras, the centers that are placed within our being, which are existing there and acting there, and which are in a subtle form, are expressed outside as plexuses. Which doctors know? Is there any doctor in this group? All right. They are expressed as plexuses. And doctors know about the plexuses because they can see the plexuses outside. But what are the centers that are controlled there? I do not know if the medical science has gone that far to accept that there are centers inside the medulla oblongata which is controlling these centers. I don't know. I have done medicine for the same reason because I had to talk to these doctors and scientists later on. So I have done it. But at that time, it was not so. Even in my nomenclature, you see, I'll be using those old terminologies which I learnt in my young age. And if there's any difference, you shouldn't mind it because you people are changing your nomenclature every now and then. So these subtle centers that are placed inside the medulla oblongata act on the gross plexuses that are outside. Doctors will accept that much, I know. They won't have an objection to that. But little further they will not go. They cannot. They should not, as doctors. But as Sahajyoga is telling, once you have the experience and once you have found out, then why will you say no? But one thing we must know, that if there is no microscope, how can you see something that is in a cell? With these eyes, you may not be able to see something, but supposing you get those eyes which are microscopic, and if you tell others, they are not going to believe because they must also get the microscopic eyes. This is the little problem of Sahaja. That it has to happen to you, that you could see all these things what I am talking about. Now, let us see what are these centers. Now when I describe them, you need not get a fright. You need not accept. Again and again I am trying. You see, with children it is very difficult. You have to take them this way, that way. God knows where their mind will just slip out. You see, they will find out some loophole somewhere and just disappear. So I have to take your attention properly so that you get the stuff that you are here for. That you get what you have within yourself. You get your own powers. So that you know yourself. So I have to, chide you and look after you and manage you very well so that there is no problem. Don't allow your attention to just capture your mind to take you away, you see, because your mind will be playing tricks with you. So be careful. Of course, you should not also get brainwashed by what I am saying. You can get me very well whether whatever I am saying is correct or not.